I got up this morning and I started my day, God's mercy was with me all of the way. His goodness stayed close by to meet all my needs. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm never forsaken, I'm never alone. One day I'm a-moving to my brand new home. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm counting my blessings as I journey along. Good friends, a family, and a place to call home. The church where I worship, the Bible I read. My Lord is taking good care of me. When Satan comes tempting and he brings up my past, I tell him I'm forgiven and it's buried at last. The bloodshed on Calvary now speaks for me. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm never forsaken, I'm never alone. One day I'm a-moving to my brand new home. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm never forsaken, I'm never alone. One day I'm a-moving to my brand new home. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking, He's always taking. My Lord is taking good care of me. What I was and I'm not what I'll be. You see, I've been born again. My life has been changed, completely rearranged since the day that Christ set me free. The old man I shed, I'm living, He's dead. I'm walking this heavenly way. I have no regrets, for nothing I've left, I'll stick with the old-fashioned way. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. I'm a hell-fighting, devil-denier who's washed in the crimson flood. I'm singing and shouting, no longer doubting, just waiting on Jesus to come. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. It's settled and decided, I'm not gonna hide it. I am not ashamed. The old King James Bible can still bring revival when the saints kneel down to pray. I believe Bible teaching and Holy Ghost preaching are the answer for this modern day. And old-timey worship, it's not gonna hurt us, we call it the old-fashioned way. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. I'm a hell-fighting, devil-denier who's washed in the crimson flood. I'm singing and shouting, no longer doubting, just waiting on Jesus to come. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. I'm a hell-fighting, devil-denier who's washed washed in the crimson flood. I'm singing and shouting, no longer doubting, just waiting on Jesus to come. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. I'm an old-fashioned, Bible-believing, born-again child of God. I'm a born-again child of God. Here among the shadows in a lonely land, we're a band of pilgrims on the move, burdened down with sorrow, shunned on every hand. We're looking for a city built above, looking for a city where we'll never die. There, the sainted millions never say goodbye. There we'll meet our Savior and our loved ones too. Come, Holy Spirit, all our hopes renewed. Here in disappointment we so sadly roam, friends no longer speak one word of love. We have found contentment, Jesus promised us a home. We're looking for a city built above, looking for a city where we'll never die. There, the sainted millions never say goodbye. There we'll meet our Savior and our loved ones too. Come, Holy Spirit, all our hopes renewed. In this land of danger, we're going here and there, trusting in the blessed Savior's love. Though we may be strangers living in this world of care, we're looking for a city built above, looking for a city where we'll never die. There, the sainted millions never say goodbye. There we'll meet our Savior and our loved ones too. Come, Holy Spirit, all our hopes renewed. Looking for a city where we'll never die. There, the sainted millions never say goodbye. There we'll meet our Savior and our loved ones too. Come, Holy Spirit, all our hopes renewed. Looking for a city where we'll never die. There, the sainted millions never say goodbye. There got up this morning and I started my day. God's mercy was with me all of the way. His goodness stayed close by to meet all my needs. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm never forsaken, I'm never alone. One day I'm a-moving to my brand new home. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm counting my blessings as I journey along. Good friends, a family, and a place to call home. The church where I worship, the Bible I read. My Lord is taking good care of me. When Satan comes tempting and he brings up my past, I tell him I'm forgiven and it's buried at last. The bloodshed on Calvary now speaks for me. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm never forsaken, I'm never alone. One day I'm a-moving to my brand new home. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm never forsaken, I'm never alone. One day I'm a-moving to my brand new home. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm blessed beyond measure, just look close, you'll see. My Lord is taking, He's always taking. My Lord is taking good care of me. I'm not what I was.
All right, good morning. I hope you all had a great week. And if I seem a little scatterbrained this morning, I'm sorry. I got thrown to this about 5 minutes ago. So anyway, let's take up some prayer requests this morning. Anybody have any prayer requests?
Brother Kenley, do pray for Brother Brendan. He's not feeling good this morning. Brother Brendan's not here because he's sick, so let's remember him in prayer. And then also, I talked to Brother Jerry and Miss Karen this week. Brother Jerry's having some real problems with some of his levels on some of his blood work. It's causing him to hallucinate. He's been having some real issues, and you could tell when I talked to Miss Karen on the phone, she's having just a hard time. Apparently, if she gets out of sight, he gets very nervous and starts calling for her and things like that. And so, anyhow, you can just imagine, now they're making, because of all this, go back to upgrades every day for dialysis and things like that. And so, anyhow, it's just, it's wearing on Miss Karen too. So just really remember them in prayer. If you remember Brother David, Miss Teresa, Brother Earl, Miss Joanne, continue to remember Brother Ben's dad. I called Brother Ben day before yesterday and talked to him, and he said that there's not much change. The Mayo Clinic said no because of the prognosis of death. They said they didn't think there was anything they could do either. There's one specialist that they may try to talk to, but the outlook's just not good at all. Brother Ben said he's showing signs now of forgetting how to breathe too. And so anyhow, just continue to remember him in your prayers. And Brother Stacy is the brother again this morning, so remember him. And it's a lot to pray about. And continue to remember Brother Dorsey in your prayers as well. And just certainly a lot to pray about. A lot of sickness and things going on. I think Brother Brian's not feeling well either. And so they stayed home this morning just out of caution for everybody else too. So just remember all.
Let's remember those. Anybody else this morning? Let's remember that. Anyone else?
Remember Tabitha, she went back home, said she wasn't. Loretta Thomas said she wasn't feeling good, and Mom, she said out here, said she just go back home. She remember her.
Remember that. Anybody else this morning?
Continue to remember my grandmother. She got to go home
Anybody else this morning?
Let's also remember that on Thursday.
Let's do. She has her heart test, her stress test on Thursday. So let's remember that. Anybody else? If not, Brother Evan, would you pray for us?
Father, we love you this morning. We thank you for the privilege of being here now. Thank you for your grace and mercy upon our lives. We thank you most of all for your salvation. Father, we bring these requests before you this morning. I pray for each and every need of each and every heart. No doubt there's many unspoken. No doubt there's many physical needs. Father, I pray for all the ones that are affected with Brendan, Tabitha, Brian, Lord, Brother Jerry. Brother Ben's dad, Father, there's numerous ones. We pray that you would touch each one according to your will, that you would be seen working in those areas. And we pray for us today, Father, that you would help us, touch us in a mighty way, touch your man as he stands to preach. I pray that you give him clarity of thought, what he's studied. I pray that you give him great liberty today. Lord, I pray if there's one lost, I pray that you show him their need for Savior, Father, before it's eternally too late. Father, be careful to thank you for everything that's done because you're worthy in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, this morning open your Bibles to Psalms 27. Psalms 27, starting in verse number 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is my strength of my life, of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me, to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. From those three verses, I'm just thankful this morning that even though when our times have hard times and we have the trials and struggles and temptations of this world, and when there's hard things come up either at work, at school, or wherever you may be, the Lord's going to be there for us. He's going to be our strength. He's our salvation. He's going to be that light in our life. And he's going to be there to help us along our way, and we're not alone in this walk of life. He's there with us, and I'm just thankful this morning that he is with us all of our wherever we go, wherever we're going to be at. And so just this week, as you're walking through your daily life, just as those hard times come up this week, just remember that the Lord's there with you, and he's gonna be there with you to protect you and help you along your way. So that's all I have this morning, and you are dismissed to your classes.
Does anybody know what we're supposed to be talking about today? Okay, sin. You know, that's a great. That was a great message. It's about sin. But anyway, it's great to be in the Lord's house this morning, and I hope this lesson that I have today for you is a blessing to you. We're going to be jumping from here to there, and try to finish up in the book of Isaiah today in the. As we've been going through what we call the survey of this Old Testament. But there's a lot in here. There's so much stuff in here that if we was to break this down and cover it entirely, it'd take us about 2 months actually to do this. It'd take, to really get into the book of Isaiah. I hope you're reading. I hope that you, after we get through, that during the week that you take what we taught and you explore some of that, and I guarantee you, if you do that, you're going to find a lot of stuff that I did not mention because there's just so much in here. We've looked at quite a few things in here, and you go from this direction here, and then all of a sudden it changes, and you're into this direction in the book of Isaiah. There's a lot of history in the book of Isaiah, a great deal of history. The 4 kings that Isaiah was around during that particular time. A lot of history about those gentlemen themselves and how they ruled the country, how they would start out being for God. The next thing you know, just like what we see today, how money or something of that nature can turn them into evil and for their own gotten gains. But anyway, in chapter 7, we looked at Emmanuel. It talked about that there before him therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign, Emmanuel, a sign. Then we got into chapter 9, and verse 6, Emmanuel was a sign, and then in chapter 9, verse 6, he is a gift. He's a gift unto us that he is given. And so you go back and forth a great deal here. You give a little bit here, then you read on further. Oh, yeah, now I understand what they're talking about back there. So anyway, chapter 11 is a very important part of the book of Isaiah. In chapter 11, the first 3 verses is really strong in what Isaiah is talking about. In verse 1 it says, "And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." We've talked about that a great deal. We went back to the parable that they mentioned in here about the vine, about Israel, and the Gentiles are going to be eventually grafted in. You're looking at a person who prophesied 700 years forward. To me, that's amazing. And you get up here and you listen to a lot of people talk about, well, there's a prophecy. And you know who I'm talking about. That you look on TV, and he's predicting all these things that's going to occur at the end of times. And a lot of stuff that he says is history, but he's not predicting what's going to occur. And here, and a lot of the stuff that we've seen that Isaiah has prophesied has already come true. It's already happened. There will be a child that will be born. Now that happened 700 years in prophecy. So anyway, in verse 2 it says, "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord." Now you get into that, the first thing that comes to my mind, they're talking about 7 spirits in the book of Revelation. So what do I do when I read that? So I turn to the book of Revelation to see about those spirits. And that's what the book of Isaiah should, as you study the book of Isaiah, that's what you should be doing. You should be reading there. Now you should be in Revelation. And so, these spirits are in 3 pairs that we just mentioned, in 3 pairs. Wisdom and understanding. Mind, wisdom discerns nature of things. Understanding discerns the differences of things. And you get into that, well, you have to stop there and you have to really dig to really get what that's all about. And then you it says counsel and might, practical activity. Practical activity. Counsel is the ability to adopt right conclusions. Right conclusions. One of the things in your writing a paper, what is the strongest part of your paper? How you write the conclusion. Well, how you conclude and tie everything in together of what you just said. You say, well, it's a summary of it. Yes, it could be. But also, it is when you write that paper, your conclusion means a great deal within the paper. And I learned that in English 102 the hard way because I was terrible at writing. When you go to college and you write your first term paper, and you got this professor who's up there, and he grades your term paper, and he sends it back, and it looked like a Christmas tree. All the green marks was the bad stuff, and it looked like a Christmas tree. And then down at the bottom, he writes in a little note and says, "Are you sure college is what you want to do?" But anyway, that was my writing. It took me a while to understand how to do that. But anyway, so knowledge and fear, and the fellowship with Jehovah, knowledge of the Lord and fear of the Lord. You get that. And those are those spirits that we're talking about. And the 7 spirits included the Spirit of the Lord mentioned at the beginning to correspond to the 7 lighted candlesticks. Now, with its main shaft and 3 pairs of branches from its side. Well, what are we talking about? We're into the temple now. We're talking about the temple. Exodus 25, 31, and 32. So, when you read this stuff, it sends you all over the place. Now we're in the book of Exodus. Now we're going to go into the book of Revelation. The 7 spirits are also mentioned in Revelation 1:4, 4:5, and 5 and 6. So as you look at that, so it takes you to different places. But when you get finished, it should all come together. Isn't this book great? It makes you study. It makes you want to study because you want to find out. So anyway, all right. With all that said, we're in chapter 13 today. We've looked at quite a bit. And when you get into chapter 13, I told you at one point we're going to move at a fast rate. And we're going to, from chapters 13 through 23, chapters 13 through 23, you're looking at now the burdens of the Gentile nations. And the valley of vision, the valley of vision. You know, what is all that about? Well, we're going to be looking at some of that quickly. But do you not think it's ironic that he's going to talk about these nations? He's going to be talking about Edom. He's going to be talking about all these nations that cause problems with Israel and how they're going to be judged. Those that, there's a blessing to come out of those nations that help Israel. And there is a curse that's coming out of those nations who cursed Israel. There's going to be judgment. Judgment is coming. So, it's fitting that Babylon is the first on the list in chapter 13. It's fitting. We've already went through the prophecy of Assyria. How Assyria is going to come in and take over the northern kingdom. How it's going to take over Smyrna. How it's going to take over those 10 tribes and scatter them abroad. They're gone. And, and they talk about, and you start reading a lot of commentaries, they call it the 10 missing tribes. They're not missing. Because I guarantee some of them came back and went to the southern kingdom. Some of them did. But they've been scattered abroad. One place it's settled. What was one of the nations that really accepted them in and took the Jews in? We call it Germany. That's one place that ended up settling. A lot of the Jews ended up in Germany. And there's a lot of history goes back there, and we all know that. And I'm not going to get into that. But Babylon was the rallying point of rebellion. That's why it's in chapter 13. Rebellion, the number 13. Rebellion. And against God, right after the flood, Genesis 11. Babylon in the Old Testament and Revelation represents the idolatrous and pagan world system in opposition of God. When you go back and you study the history, the Baptist history, and you really get into that and the Bible, and you start looking at all those different things, you get how all these pagan worships and all these things, and how people turn to that, how they were led to do that, and so forth and so on. So, in Isaiah 13:3, I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for mine anger, even them that rejoice in the highness. Before Babylon had even come into power, and carried away the kingdom of Judah into captivity, Isaiah already sees the Medes and the Persians, how Babylon's going to be captured. So, let me get to where I want to be. All right. The prophet Isaiah hammered away at the sins and follies of Judah. He constantly was telling, the kings and what to do. Like he goes to King Ahaz, do not give alliance to Assyria. Why? Because he knew that Assyria was going to come in and capture. And so the Assyrians tried to come in and take over Jerusalem, and they failed. 185,000 Assyrians died at the hands of the Lord. Do not touch Judah. Why? Because that Jerusalem, that's where the ark was. That's where God was at. It was not in the northern kingdom. The ark was, and the temple was there in Jerusalem. So, anyway, far beyond the rise and fall of Assyria, beyond the rise and fall of Babylon and Persia, Greece, and Rome. Isaiah saw that. Now, you got to realize something. God didn't come down and speak to Isaiah through this. It was a vision. The reason that you read the book of Isaiah and you say, it's happening now during Isaiah's time as you read it. No. Isaiah saw it. It was a vision. He saw the Assyrians, the way they attacked and how they took over nations, how they killed women and children and so forth and took over the nations because all they was wanting is the gold and the wealth out of that nation. So you got to keep in mind as you're reading the book of Isaiah that it is a vision. He sees this. There was another person that saw the entire book, John. It was a vision. He saw this in Revelation. And some of the things that he saw, God said, do not reveal that. In other words, keep your mouth shut. Because I have different thoughts of that, and that's just my opinion. So let's just move on. So, and not only that, he saw beyond the church age. The church age. You know, the establishment of the church is very interesting, and how it began, how the apostles began, and how every apostle was martyred and killed. So, and there's a lot of dark times and a lot of things that occurred. He saw Israel gathered from all nations. And it shall come to pass, this is important, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people. There was a remnant come out of the book of Ezra. Why? To rebuild the temple. Cyrus, it's in the book of Isaiah. Way before it ever occurred. He saw the king before the king was even born. That he was going to send a remnant back to rebuild this temple. In the book of Ezra. And Nehemiah. And then you got, there's remnants coming out of Nehemiah and you got remnants coming out of the book of Ezra. Is there a whole lot? No. 5,000 people both times, I think it was, something like that. So as you're looking at that remnant, why? Because it was the group that was the strongest for the Lord. And they were going to rebuild this temple. So, excuse me. So he saw Israel regathered from all nations. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Patros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nation, and shall assemble the outcast of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Now, what are we talking about there? What are we talking about? Does anybody have any idea? Israel is now a new nation. What year did that occur? Now, this already happened. It happened in 1948 when the Israel came back, and now they're a nation. They're a nation again. Babylon's going to be destroyed. And Babylon will not be rebuilt. Babylon was never rebuilt. There's a lot of history to that right there, and we need to move on. When Isaiah, let me find where am I at? I'm scrolling down through here. Stay with me. We're on a commercial break right now. When Isaiah wrote that the nation of Israel and Judah were still in the land, still intact, neither the Assyrian deportation of Israel or the Babylonian captivity of Judah had taken place. as we have said. Babylon was not even a world power. He saw beyond the Babylonian captivity. He saw beyond all that occurred. You know, he saw Israel again, a nation with its own flag. We're talking about 1948. He saw Israel gathered into the land, not just from Egypt, as in the days of Moses, not just from Babylon, as in the days of Zerubbabel. I never couldn't say that name, Zerubbabel. But from every nation under heaven, he saw that. So as we look at these nations, and we talk about these nations, quickly, let me just give you this right here. You start at these nations. They are called the sanctified ones and the weapons of the Lord because they will act as God's instrument of judgment. That's what's happening. These nations are called in to judge Judah at that time. These nations. You're talking about Philistia. You're talking about, that's in chapter 14, chapter 15 through 16. You're talking about Moab. When you say the word Moab, what comes to your mind? Who was from Moab? Was Ruth from Moab? Yes. Ruth, you know, Naomi, and you know the story. You know the story of the book of Ruth. But that from Moab. 17 through 18, Damascus. Damascus, the capital city of Syria. You talk about chapters 19 and 20, Egypt, that nation. You're talking about, in chapter 21, desert of sea. That's interesting. That's you need to read that. Chapter 21, 11 through 12, that's Edom. Edom. What nation came out of Edom? Who was it? His name was Esau. That's where it all came from. Esau. And, you know, God has a plan. God has a great plan. And if you really get into it and you study it, you can see how that plan came together. What a mastermind God was. I mean, it just you don't think it's going to happen, but all of a sudden it just comes together. And he's talking about 21, 13 through 17, Arabia. He's talking about 22, Valley of Vision. Good reading there. Chapter 23, Tyre. So those are the nations that we're talking about in here that we list. There is no reason to doubt that this will happen. Both of the other predictions of this chapter, we're talking about chapter 11, going back to chapter 11, had a literal and actual historical fulfillment in history. Jesus came yesterday, the Jews are coming home today, and joy cometh in the morning. So, and you're going to go through chapter 39. Now, you're looking at this as we jump from there. This is the history. Those 3 chapters is really a lot of history there. But there is also a lot of prophecy and there's a lot of meaning there. So it's so important. An event was the miraculous destruction of the host of Sennacherib. Who was Sennacherib? The king, the ruler of Assyria. So you go through the book and you got to kind of keep it straight. And you basically, Tiglath-Pileser, he was the first king. He was the ruler at that time, and as the attack on Judah or the northern kingdoms that occurred outside the walls of Jerusalem, that the Holy Spirit actually records the incident in full 3 times. Happy indeed was Hezekiah, the king of Judah. So at this point in time, who's the king of Judah at this time? Hezekiah. Very interesting. Hezekiah, at this time, if you look at chapter 38, if you have your Bibles, you can turn into chapter 38. Now, what is the most interesting thing that you can say about Hezekiah during this particular time? Hezekiah fell ill. He was sick. Hezekiah fell ill. Now, and we look at this, and these chapters deal with Hezekiah's illness in chapter 38 and recovery and his contact with Babylon. Now, God extended his life for how many years? 15 years. Very interesting. How many has ever went to Psalms 120 and you read Psalms 120 through 134? What is that known as? Very interesting. Song of degrees. Song of degrees. Now, you start looking at this. Ahaz's sundial. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Ahaz's sundial. And I'm paraphrasing a lot of this stuff because it'd take a long time to go through this. But when this is dealing with Hezekiah asked the Lord to give him a sign. He prayed to the Lord to heal him. And he added 15 years on his life. So you look at this, and you go from the Psalms 120 to 134. How many books is that? Or what are we looking at? We're looking at 15. We're looking at 15 years. Is there a connection? Yes, there is. If you get down and you really study that, and you go to, you can go to 2 Kings. You find it in 2 Kings chapter 18 and chapter 20 and 10 also. So you go to look at those chapters and you read that, because we're not going to go through that today. But if you look at that, it will actually explain exactly what happened. The sundial that you said here was brought back 10 degrees. That's the sign that the Lord gave to Hezekiah. But you have to get into, you go to 2 Kings and you look at that, and that's when Hezekiah prayed to the Lord to heal him and give him his 15 years added onto his life. And I know I kind of butchered all that up, but there's a whole lot there. But you can go back and read it on your own. And there's a lot of it that I don't really pick up and I really don't understand. But anyway, happy is that people who have godly rulers in power and men of biblical spiritual vision to guide their steps in statescraft. He's talking about Hezekiah. Hezekiah was a godly king. And it was kind of like Hezekiah was not through. He became sick. He did not want to die. He wanted to see some things through that he wanted to see that happen. And so God gave him 15 more years on his life. So if America needs anything today, I'll throw this in, okay? If America needs anything today, that is what it needs. It needs a lot of Hezekiahs in this world today. It doesn't need better weapons. We doesn't need better colleges, but we just need better men to rule the United States. So anyway, that leads us into chapter 40. Chapter 40 through 66. Chapter 40 through 66. In these chapters, the prophet passes from the contemporary scene of his day to the future. If you read it, all of a sudden it changes. It changes now. It's future tense. It's future tense. Although Isaiah is given a vision to all this, he sees all this happen. In his writing in the first 39 chapters is a lot present tense. It sounds present tense that it's happening during his time, but that's not it. So now we're looking at the future tense. So no longer addressing a people facing the imminent Assyrian invasion, he's looking a century into the future, for in the long run it was Babylon, not Assyria, who they needed to fear. Babylon, the Babylonian captivity, 586 BC. And that's when they was captured and they was taken into Babylon for how many years? 70. 70 years. And then King Cyrus said that they could come back, and then you get into the book of Ezra, and you see that remnant coming back to build the temple. Is the temple in state today? Is there a temple today in Jerusalem? Is there a temple? Well, in 70 A.D., Titus came in and destroyed the temple. So there is no temple. There is no temple. When is the temple going to be rebuilt? The temple will be rebuilt, and this is all in this book. You got it? The temple will be rebuilt after the church is raptured out. The first 3.5 years, there's going to be a gentleman come in and convince the Jews that he's it. So for the first 3.5 years, they're going to rebuild their temple. He's going to have them to worship into the temple. That's going to occur. And then all of a sudden, toward the end of the 3.5 years, there's going to be an abomination, desolation. What is that? That Antichrist is going to sacrifice a hog on the altar. And that's when the next 3.5 years comes in, and it's a little bit gruesome as we have studied. So, as you get all that through the book of Isaiah, but you have to, you can't stay in the book of Isaiah. You got to go through in the book of Revelations. You got to go, to chapter 9. Or chapter 4. You got in the book of Revelations. You got to picture all that. You see what I'm talking about? So Isaiah sends you other places throughout the book. It's going to occur. It even talks about the church age in the book of Revelation, starting with chapter 2. Starts with the first church, Ephesus. And then there's churches. Those are the church ages. That's the development of the church, the history of the church, all the way through. So anyway, the last 27 chapters of Isaiah are divided into 3 sections. The first, the prophet sees Isaiah's miseries. In the next, he sees Judah's Messiah. And the third, he sees Judah's millennium. As we look at this book. It is of interest that the book of Isaiah has 66 chapters, the same number of chapters as there are books in the Bible. As the Bible is divided into 2 major sections, an Old and a New Testament. So Isaiah is in 2 major sections, one dealing with the Assyrian era and the other dealing with the Babylonian era. As these are 39 books in our Old Testament and 27 books in our New Testament, so there are 39 chapters in the first major section of Isaiah and 27 chapters in the second section. A lot of connections here. And Isaiah shows that to us. All who read through Isaiah notice the change in language that we just mentioned, the style and subject. After 39, we change it. It changes. It is the purpose of this survey to point out one interesting feature of the last section of Isaiah in its 27 chapters. There are 3 main segments, each containing 9 chapters. That's very important. 9 chapters. There's 9 chapters deals with Judah's miseries, as we mentioned, chapters 40 through 48. 9 chapters deal with Judah's Messiah, Jesus, 49 through 57. 9 chapters deals with Judah's millennium. Now, we know, I hope we do, we know that there is going to be a millennium, correct? Are we in the millennium now? When is the millennium going to occur? After the rapture, the tribulation time, at the very end of the tribulation, the Lord comes back on that white horse. And all the saints is going to be with him. And I got a story that I used to tell about the white horse. The last time that I ever rode a horse. Got on this horse and I was trying to ride it. And I'll be coming back on this horse. And John's already grinning because he's heard this story. So I was on that horse. And it took off. And I was up around its neck, under its neck, around it. It was awful. I was just so thankful the lady from the Walmart come and unplugged it, or I'd been killed right there. So anyway, that's the last time I was ever been on a horse. But I'll get to ride that horse again. But I'll do a better job of riding that horse. All right. I heard that from a preacher. And I can't think of who it was. Who was it? And you probably know him. Phil Kidd? Yes. Thank you. That's the gentleman that I got that from. I heard that. I mean, he's up there preaching, and all of a sudden he takes this spin. He goes through this. I thought, man, he's in the wrong business. He needs to be a comedian. He's good. Yes. But anyway, I stole that from him. That's where I got that. But anyway, that's when we're talking about that millennium, when we're going to lay down. And it's in the book. It talks it here in chapter 11 about the wolf. The lion lays down with the wolf. That's not what it says. But the wolf, you understand what I'm talking about. You know where I'm going with all that. But anyway, so we're going to look at just real quick, and we're going to finish up. I got about 4 minutes. So we're going to be looking at the central section. We're going to be looking at the central section. And the central section, do you remember what it was? That's exactly right. It was Judah's Messiah. So anyway, so if we look at the central section, and there is a central verse, a central statement. And if you're going to take anything out of the book of Isaiah, take this with you. Take this. If anybody says, what do you remember the most about Isaiah? This is the verse you need to remember. This is it, right here. It all comes together right here. Got it? And it goes like this. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. That's in chapter what? 53. Turn there with me. Chapter 53. And you're looking at verse 6. That is the theme of it all, right here. Chapter 53 is the theme of it all, and this is the verse of it all. All we like sheep have gone astray, and we have turned every one his own way. And the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. So, and there it is. Isaiah the evangelical prophet, Isaiah the great gospel preacher of the Old Testament, Isaiah, whose every name means salvation of Jehovah, brings us step by step to Calvary and leaves us standing as guilty sinners before the one who loved us enough to die for us. It was this very sentence that the Ethiopian eunuch was reading in his chariot when Philip led him to Christ. For that is what this great book of Isaiah is all about. It is about Christ, God's answer to man's desperate needs. And I'll close with this. Years ago, the great evangelist, now this is coming from John Phillips. This last section I've been reading from John Phillips, okay? Years ago, the great evangelist D.L. Moody was aboarding a train. He had been conducting evangelical meetings. Many have been saved. There was one man, however, who had kept on putting it off. He knew he was a sinner. He knew he was lost. Knew he needed to be saved. He had intended to go forward and get the matter settled, but he had put it off and put it off. Now the meeting was over, and D.L. Moody, the man who had been used to give God to hammer away at his conscience. Now he was leaving. He was getting on a train. And the man rushed off to the station. He knew he needed to be saved, hoping to have a word with the preacher before he left. But he arrived there just as the train was about to leave. You know, it's just like I read this and I think of, Noah on the ark. All of a sudden, when that door shut, people, it's over. When the church raptures out, the door's going to shut. It's over. So, and he was about to leave the station. He spotted D.L. Moody waving goodbye to a group of friends. He rushed down the platform. Mr. Moody, he cried. What must I do to be saved? The train was beginning to move, and the desperate man ran alongside the coach. D.L. Moody looked at him. What could he say to point a man to Christ in just 5 seconds? As the train was gathering speed, D.L. Moody yelled out, Isaiah 53:6. He called, go in at the first aisle and go out at the last one. The man went home, found his Bible, and turned to Isaiah 53:6. He went in at the first aisle. All we like sheep have gone astray. That means that he doesn't have a shepherd. Doesn't have a shepherd. We have a good shepherd here. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. Of us all. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Thank God, he said, I am a sinner, but Jesus died for me. And with that, we are through the book of Isaiah. So I encourage you to read the book of Amos. That'll be the next book that we get into next Sunday. I believe Brother Caleb is going to be teaching Sunday school because Brenda has convinced me we need to go on a camping trip. So we'll be gone next Sunday. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate this book of Isaiah. I tell you, it's a great book to study, to really get down and study. And there's a whole lot more than what we just mentioned in the last 3 Sundays. Any questions or any comments, anything? Well, I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much.